2015 is a pretty challenging growing season for much of the Corn Belt. How did things end up for the most part for this year?
In 2015, growers were facing a number of challenging conditions. Number one, commodity prices were still low. And number two, Mother Nature was not cooperating in a lot of areas. I mean, we had disease pressure that we were not expecting at all. So a lot of growers got burned. We had gray leaf spot moving in early in the cornfields. We had northern corn leaf blight moving in later. And even in soybeans, we had a lot of septoria pressure as well as white mold. Now, what we saw, though, was that growers that were proactive in making a fungicide application, though, it allowed them to get ahead of that disease. The guys that decided to wait and see if that disease came in were actually, by the time they noticed it, it was too late, and it was hard for them to manage that disease at that time point. So the guys that we saw had success last year were the guys that were very proactive in their fungicide applications. They got ahead of the disease, and in the end, that allowed them to be set up for some of the highest yields that we've seen in a while. I think a lot of people were surprised with some of the high yields that we saw coming in.
When we look at a year like this, margins were already tight heading into 2015, and going into 2016, margins are expected to be even tighter. How do growers make the decisions to make the investment to protect the crop? Is that what we need to look at, or how do we balance inputs and lower commodity prices?
With the lower commodity prices, growers are all thinking, what are the inputs that I absolutely need to keep my operation going? Now, whenever it comes to dealing with this difficult market condition, there's one thing that growers can do, and that's increase yield. Really, that's the best tool that they've got in their toolbox to counteract low commodity prices. And what's really important is to make the decisions on those inputs that are going to help them not only increase yield, but that are also going to consistently perform. So what we've noticed is from research we conducted of on-farm field trials, over 500 trials showed that headline AMP fungicide applied at tassel, timing, and corn increased yield by 12 to 14 bushels per acre. And even more importantly, it increased yield over the untreated 93% of the time. In pre-Axor fungicide applied to soybeans at R3 stages, we saw an average yield increase of 4.5 to 5 bushels per acre, so that's giving that yield that grower needs. But we also saw the consistency of performance there as well, with a 92% consistency of where the pre-Axor out-yielded the untreated. What that means for growers is that they're making a good decision to increase their yield, but they're also protected no matter what happens, whether it's a disease year or whether it's a drought year like back in 2012. They're going to be increasing their yield in both of those situations from applying headline AMP or pre-Axor.
We look at smarter management practices really is going, it seems like that's kind of a trend moving ahead. What is the best way for producers to find out and to see information about test results, research results, and if these products are right for their acreage?
Each grower's operation is unique. Every grower has different challenges that he's facing, and there is no one-size-fits-all for every farm. So that's why BASF is committed to bringing the newest innovations to them in terms of portfolio, but also in terms of people. We've invested in our innovation specialists, and who those are is those are actually personal advisors for growers. So I recommend for growers to reach out to their own innovation specialist, and that BASF innovation specialist is going to help them to identify what are the most critical inputs for them in their operation in terms of not only protecting yield, but also increasing yield to help offset that increasing pressure from the markets.
From Trade Talk 2015, I'm Meghan Grebner on Brownfield.